So good morning. Thank you for joining me today. So how was your morning so far? Did you have your coffee already? Anyone missing a cup of coffee? Awesome. Yeah, I promise it won't be too long, so you can have time to go back for your coffee. And what else? Maybe what kind of things you're doing in your life? Is it like kind of development or business? Who is here from business side? Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you. The others, I assume, are developers, right? Anyone not developer? Designer, maybe? Designer? No designers? Yeah. I'm wondering why always I get only developers, which is awesome, by the way. So what else? Front-end developers? Anyone back-end developer? 2, 3 back-end developers? Okay, what kind of language are you using on the back-end? Is it Java? C#? ASP? Java? Anyone using Go? No one. Okay. Anyone using Perl, maybe? No. Okay. Yeah, weird questions. Weird questions. So the front-end guys, are you using Angular, maybe? Okay. Who's using React? Interesting. And anyone from Vaadin, maybe? Anyone using Vaadin? One only? Okay. Fair enough. So maybe we can start now. So my name is Mahdi. I work for Vaadin as a developer advocate, and today I'm gonna talk about dismantling a progressive web app, and yeah, a little bit more about myself. So I'm originally a developer. I used to be a developer for a long period of time, and then now I'm giving those talks. I live in Finland, where the HQ of Vaadin, but you will find me usually around the world in conferences. Yeah, so excited to be here in Poland now after a very long flight. But nevertheless, so my presentation today is going to be, if this pointer works, is going to be about, first of all, what is a progressive web app? Why progressive web app? If you're wondering how can we get a progressive web app from scratches, and then the most important part is actually how to get progressive web app inside your maybe enterprise level application. So I figured out that most of developers nowadays, especially experienced one, already have some kind of application running, and for them progressive web app might be something to be considered for upcoming project, for the next project, for my hobby project. My research today is more of, can we actually get a progressive web app inside our existing enterprise level application? So, of course, before I start to talk inside the topic, maybe we can get a little bit of motivation. Why progressive web app? Why we are talking a lot about this hype? So, if we look at this word, I bet it's very self-explanatory. We can say progressive. Everyone knows what is progressive. Everyone knows what is web. But what is app? So I had to research what is the meaning of app. And if we search on definition of app, app might be abbreviation for Apple Care Protection Plan, can be Advanced Placement Program, or association of professional piercers. So who knows? Like, really, this is the top definitions of the acronym app. Unless if you got a similar email like myself a few days ago from Devox Poland telling you about the final preparations, and if you pay attention, they mentioned the word app. So yeah, it must be related somehow to other thing, right? Actually, according to dictionary, app is something that is downloaded by a user to a mobile device. The word app is really very, very old, and it has been used by many people, but people started to use it on a daily basis approximately with the same time when Steve Jobs announced about apps for iPhone. So this is when the word app started to be a hype and everyone start to use it. But the question is it a smartphone or a phone that has apps? So the word app now is a little bit misleading. Are we always downloading like smart apps? Is all our native apps are smart apps, or are just we having a device with huge hardware that is holding a bunch of apps? So if we go back to this announcement by Devoxx Poland when they sent us this email telling us about using Devoxx app, there is a reason behind it. There is why Devoxx and probably most of other businesses and conferences and everywhere, they prefer to use an app and target people through an app. If you're like myself, you most probably open this email from a smartphone or an app phone, right? And this is a little bit of old statistics. We know now already that the usage of internet coming from mobile phone has exceeded this coming from laptops or desktops. So targeting people is most likely more worthily if you target them through mobile devices. And now, don't count on yourself. Like most of you are developers, which means that you're having a laptop and probably you spend 8 hours a day in front of a laptop at least. But don't measure on yourself. Measure on the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people nowadays don't even care about having a laptop anymore. A mobile phone or a tablet is more than enough. So when Devoxx people decided to make an app, they decided to go with the trend, which is a very valid business reason, and target people in the most common media. But when I got this email, I did not install the app. How many of you actually have the Devoxx app installed right now? Okay, 50%. So for the other 50% who didn't install the app, like myself, I actually didn't install it just because of experience with normal mobile apps. When somebody tells me to install an app, I might be facing that I'm not going to use this app after the conference. So this is a yearly conference. Should I really install an app and then put a reminder after 3 days to uninstall it again? Maybe. Or maybe I just let it go. I don't really need to install the app. And here, by complexity, I mean, for example, something like the login. What if I install the app and then it tells me, hey, you're a customer, so to be able to see the agenda, you need to log in and so on. I'm not saying that Devoxx app does that, but just by experience, I know that app's going to ask me for those kind of things, and I don't remember the password and login details and all these kind of things. So I prefer to just skip it. Also, I will wonder what kind of app size and what kind of storage is going to occupy on my mobile phone, what kind of permissions it's going to have, what kind of things it's going to do on my mobile phone. So, yeah, as a replacement, what if whenever I need anything related to Devoxx, I just Google it or search in any search engine, and I find a interesting list of links highlighted here telling me where to go, what to do, and so on. So if you go and search whenever you want, for example, Devoxx agenda, Devoxx tools, Devoxx rooms, and so on, and then you find those kind of links that are going to lead you to everywhere. And this screenshot, you might be saying that, okay, this screenshot is taken from laptop device, but actually the website looks pretty interesting on any mobile device. So this is how the website of Devoxx looks like on my mobile device. And more or less, pretty much whatever I need to do in this conference through those 3 days, I can manage them through this interface without really having to go over the hassle of downloading an app and installing it and worrying about permission and worrying about uninstalling it and all these kind of things. Of course, it differs from a person to another. So a person who is visiting all Devoxxes and very committed to Devoxx might be interested to keep the app for some other reason. Or maybe you have other things related to this. But the interesting part of statistics shows that even if mobile web has more reach, people still prefer to use native apps, which is also something that we don't find as a surprise. So even though I can just figure out and find all the news that I'm looking for with a Google search, I still find that people prefer the native experience. We have this kind of comparison between the mobile web and the native. The mobile web has more reach, but the native is nicer. It feels more smooth. It has more capabilities. And this is probably why people prefer native applications. And here, if I want to take another example out of context, let's put the DevOps on the side for now, and let's take another context, for example, a restaurant. So here I am a tourist here. I don't live here. And if I want to search for a pizza place, for example, what do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to go to Play Store and search for pizzeria in Krakow? Most likely no. I'm going to search on a search engine, right? So the reach of a website that has good keywords and has good or optimized web application, in this case, is way higher than a mobile app. Now, let's assume that I found the website, and then the website told me, hey, here is our app. You have to install it to order a pizza. What do you think? Do you think I'm going to install the app to be able to order a pizza? Less likely as well. So even if they have spent a lot of money to develop a nicely looking mobile app, I most likely, and probably you are as well if you are a tourist in a place, you're less likely to install an app just to order a pizza. You might just want to see the menu quickly, want to see the location of the restaurant, you want to see the ratings, you want to see what kind of things you have or what kind of options or prices and so on, and that's it. If you want to go one extra level of ordering, you might also be interested to find it as an option to just order from the website without really having to install an app and sign up and enter my credit card information and my address and hotel and so on, to just order a pizza and then uninstall the app. So what's missing? What's missing on the web? One of the biggest things that is missing on the web is engagement, like notifications. Actually, notifications is one of the key things that can provide you with a returning user. Just provide a notification that something is happening, something you missed, something that you can do. Of course, notifications also can be a good reason for a user to completely leave you and unsubscribe, so be wise while using them. Another thing in web applications is missing, which is the offline capabilities. Something that just work all the time. Like now I'm here underground, and I don't have internet connectivity, and I still want to take a glimpse on the agenda of DevOps. Can I do that from my recent web search? Or I will regret not installing the native app. And also the user experience. So something that is not sluggish, fast, that is just smooth and just works. Knowing that 80% of time is only spent on 3 only native apps, this comes on our side as a help. So even if you develop an application and the user managed to install it, then you are less likely also that the user gonna use it. Now, other than the DevOps app, how many apps have you installed within the last months? Is it 1? More than 1? Okay, 3, 4. How many of you didn't install any app at all? Okay, only 1. Okay. Actually, statistics says that on average, we don't install any apps at all. Oh, I'm saying other than DevOps because we have an event here. But people don't install any apps at all on average per month. Now, think about it. When you get a new mobile phone, You start by installing a bunch of apps and all your comfortable apps that you're using on a daily basis. And then after that, it goes down, down, down. And then you find yourself saturated and don't feel like installing any apps anymore. So if we go back to these statistics, it seems that from business point of view, since web apps have more reach, they have a potential to take over if we just give them more capabilities. So can we get rid of the 3 top blockers that I just mentioned, like offline, like engagement, like, I said something else, I don't remember. Sorry? Yes, thank you. User experience. So can we have a user experience that is almost native or better than native? Can we do that, and then our business reach will be higher? Can we web app? And here comes the answer. Yes, it's called Progressive Web App. So Progressive Web App came as initiative initially announced by Google. Now many players in the market, like Microsoft, Twitter, Facebook, a lot of players in the market are really adopting it, and it's more or less becoming a standard. So Progressive Web App is a term that defines a web application in a way that can solve those issues. Now, before I continue, I would love to remind you that progressive, or in general, when we are targeting the vast majority of users, they don't really care if your app is native or not. They don't care if your app is written in Kotlin or in Objective-C or even in assembly. They don't care. As far as the app works and it has reach, the user will be happy. If your app has a big banner saying that it's written in assembly, but it doesn't work properly, trust me, the user will not use it. He will not be proud of you that you wrote it in assembly. So think about it. We're here talking about enhancing the user experience and adding capabilities to a web app, and then the user will just continue using your application. Now, if I go back to this example of my restaurant when I was searching for my pizzeria, I said that obviously I'm going to start searching on a search engine online. I'll search for pizza in Krakow, right? Now, let's assume that I found a website, interesting website, and I clicked on it. And once I clicked on it, the website got me engaged and made me lose the fact that I really need to install anything. The app, like the website, just works smoothly. It's slick. It has everything I want. It even works even if I'm offline. It does everything for me. Do you think I will even think about installing an app or that I'm missing an app? That is the point. So a progressive web app actually consists of many aspects like offline support, push notifications, actually hardware access, and that's all is done in the so-called web workers. So how we actually build a progressive web app, what kind of framework or programming languages we need? Luckily, we don't need anything new. If you take a look at your existing web applications that you have right now, you may more or less have some of the capabilities of progressive web app, and that's just about of other extra things that you need to take care. So the things that we need to take care of, I have stressed about them, but I'm just going to visualize them in these 3 points. The first thing is reliability. So the user doesn't ever want to see this little cute, nice dinosaur. Yes, maybe they want to play sometime, but not when using your app. So make sure that your app never goes back to this or lose the engagement of the user. I have a very interesting big talk about this offline support and how to get rid of it. If you just search on YouTube, I have a recorded video about that part. But the second part is fast. So as I explained, the user doesn't really care if your app is written in Kotlin or Objective-C as far as if it's fast. And again, from statistics point of view, we know that users will leave your website if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. So showing this loading indicator is kind of a burden for the user. and the user will really, it will be a decision or a key decision for you to decide if they are going to continue on your site or not. And if we compare this with a normal native app, so Devox, for example, it's approximately 50 megabytes or something like that to download it on an iOS. So it means that to be able to use the Devox experience from the first shot, I need to download 50 megabytes and wait till 50 megabytes are downloaded and installed. Versus if you open the web page, which is less than 1 megabyte, then that is the comparison that we are talking about. Getting into Devox and knowing everything about Devox in less than 1 megabyte download. Of course, the lesser, the better. And finally, engaging. And engaging has many aspects and many design point of view. I can summarize them in 3 points. So a website that is really immersive, occupying the full screen if needed, no address bar, no Chrome around the website, and so on. So this is something that is really interesting. Also, being able to see it on the home screen. So a launcher, an app launcher that is available on the home screen. No need to go back and search again and again every time I want to find the same exact information. And also notifications. So how to do that? How to put everything together? So defining a web application as a progressive web app is as simple as just adding an app manifest. So app manifest is your definition to the whole world, to the navigators, to Google, to everyone, that your app is a progressive web app. It's a JSON file that you place inside your root directory that contains definition of what your app look like. I don't know this JSON file by heart. I, of course, don't. I just Google it every single time I want to use it and just copy it and create it. There are also some tools that generate this for you, so you don't really have to worry about it as far as just a simple static file containing some definitions, your icon, your app name, your start URL, and so on, and you just place it inside your root directory. And the second and most interesting part is the service worker. So how many of you know the service worker? 2, 3. Okay, so service worker luckily is now one thing that started to appear on iOS devices. So no reason not to say that progressive web app is supported on all devices nowadays. I like to define service worker as the installer of your web application. In which sense? So remember in old days when we want to have an application, we download an exe file, and then this exe file start to install the application. So this is more or less the same thing, except that it's a JavaScript file, and it should be very, very small. It's just responsible about having your application running maybe on the background, maybe organizing your caching, maybe organizing your hardware access, and so on and so forth. Of course, from security point of view, this service worker cannot do anything on the device without taking permission of the user, but this is the way to go. And you are always free to update this service worker whenever you want. Nobody will ask you to re-download an exe file and re-open it again. This service worker can just be re-updated whenever the user visits your web app. Service worker also can run on the background, which is very interesting thing that you can maybe synchronize data, you can synchronize your cache, you can update something, you can send a push notification, and so on. Which is the third part. So this is optional, of course, adding push or background synchronization or geofencing if you want. Those kind of things are optional things, but those are the key differences between a normal web application and an application that really engage the user and make a return user. More about that is interesting information that you can also take a look on this Code Lab by Google. But the question is, do you really have to start from scratch every single time? Like, those are the fundamentals, but every single time I'm going to create a manifest file, a service worker, figure out the JavaScript, and so on? Luckily, no. So if you are using one of those very famous frameworks nowadays, or modern frameworks, you're going to find that all of them provide a starter kit that provide you a progressive web app from like the basic or structure of progressive web app. So just go ahead, use the starter kit of one of those. Of course, those are the probably statistically the most popular, but there are many, many other frameworks that just have a starter pack and you can use them out of the box. Nevertheless, there is a Workbox, which is an open source project by Google, that also allows you to do a lot of things like managing caching and pretty much do everything related to progressive web app. So no, progressive web app is not a framework. No, progressive web app is not a new programming language. Yes, progressive web app is just a checklist that when you have it inside your website, you more or less gain more traction. You gain more users. JavaScript engines that render your web pages may, at some point, be faster to your virtual machine running your native apps. So yes, for example, Twitter managed to make their application even faster than a native application. So talking about native experience is now from the past. There is no excuse for you as a developer not to be able to create an application that runs as fast as a native, if not faster. Using those modern front-end tools that we have nowadays, luckily can help us to even reach better user experience than ever before. One thing that is very important about progressive web app is that it enforces the HTTPS. So this is for security point of view. Navigators like Firefox and Chrome and so on, they refuse to serve anything related to the service worker if the website is not running on HTTPS. This might be a little bit of a burden for old users or old businesses, but from user point of view, this is a huge advantage. Now, your location cannot be shared to a server if not shared through HTTPS. And think about it, your location, your picture, your Bluetooth, your whatever, anything that you are doing on the device, it's not an app that just take it and no one knows where it goes or how it's transferred or anything like that. Now we know that it must be transferred over a secure layer. Also, browsers will help you with some metadata on how to add to home screen. So adding to home screen is now something that the browser will decide for you. You cannot really control it that much. They will decide if you visit this website enough number of time and you are engaged a lot with it, then they will ask the user if this is an interesting web app that you want to install it inside your home screen. As of right now, Android even went one further step forward, which is basically installing it as part of your app drawer. So it becomes literally like an app installed from Play Store. Safari or iOS is still on the go, so you can add to home screen as a shortcut or a bookmark. It's not really installed, but I hope they are going to go over this soon. Nevertheless, I have to mention that Safari actually did a very, very good, interesting job managing the service workers, which is basically detecting if a service worker has not been used for over 2 weeks and silently uninstall it. Now, this is a win-win situation because from user point of view, you visit plenty of websites and you have no idea how many website is installing a service worker. So you don't want to keep all those service worker running on the background on your device. This is excellent news for iOS iOS users because you know that Safari is optimizing your device all the way on the background and making unneeded apps removed. And also, it's not a lose from business point of view because if your user didn't visit your website for 2 weeks, there is a great chance that your service worker has already been modified and updated. So you really didn't lose anything. You just need to manage to track your user again by better notifications or better some sort of other engagement. Also, one more interesting thing that you might want to take a look is also checking how your app look like, at least on 3G. I would have said 2G, but 3G is fine. Use tethering mode, use limited network mode on your device to be able to test how the application loads in a 2G or 3G mode to see how it looked like. As of right now, the PWA says checks only on 3G, but I would urge you to also check on 2G. If it loads fast on 2G, I guarantee you that it will load fast on 4G. Magic. So to summarize this, I have made a comparison between progressive web application that I have built in Java, and then I have upgraded it and added this checklist into it to see the difference now, how it looked like. So yes, those are exactly the same applications. I haven't cropped the image or anything. They are running exactly on the same device. The only difference is that this is before adding this checklist, manifest file, all these kind of things, and this is after applying them. It's not really a big thing, but after I managed to do this, I also got this prompt to add to home screen. So this, what you see, is the app. After being added on the home screen, it becomes a shortcut, not a shortcut. Now in Android, it's not a shortcut. It's an app, a real app, that you click on it. When you click on it, this is a splash screen once it loads, and then, well, there is like a gap here. So this is the first screen, this is the splash screen, this is when it loads, and then this is when it opens. And this is very interesting to see that the app is running independent from the browser. So it's not like running inside the browser or anything like that. It's a completely independent process. So where to find this? I'll show you my demo. So let's see if this is going to work. Maybe I increase the screen size a bit. So this is my GitHub. If you go to github/AMahdy, you're going to find some interesting demos here. Of course, I have other repositories here with other languages like Angular, React, and so on. But what I'm focusing on are those two more interesting things, which is how to add offline capabilities to an app. And this is the one that I was talking about, which is basically how to integrate progressive web app checklist or items inside Java application. So the most interesting part about this project is that I summarized the checklist here into 10 different diffs. And the idea here is very interesting. So what I did is I created a simple application. I created it with Vaadin for obvious reasons. And then I created a simple JavaScript PWA using a starter kit. So what is going to be your front-end language? Is it going to be React, for example? Then you create a starter React app or something like that. It's going to be Angular, Ionic, and so on. And then I just blend the features from here into my existing app. So I take the interesting things that I need, which is the manifest file, the service worker, and then add actually the capabilities. Because adding the service worker is okay, that's a good move, but you need to add capabilities. And at this point, there are a lot of success stories related to this, of this like blending or integrating progressive web apps. For example, Alibaba, I'm sure you know Alibaba website. So Alibaba, for example, they decided to recreate everything from scratches, okay? So they will throw their website and then create everything from scratches with PWA. But for example, Air Berlin decided to do something a little bit different. So they found that users most likely are going to use the part related to check-in, boarding pass, and so on. So this is the part that they decided to invest in and leave the whole website on the side. So if you open Air Berlin now from your mobile device, you'll find that it's not really friendly, not really a PWA. But if you go to the part about online check-in, you'll find that it's a very optimized progressive web app that you can use independently You can even use offline if it gives you the boarding pass. You can just open the boarding pass on the gate even if you don't have network connectivity. And you can pretty much do a lot of things with it without really having to worry a lot. We have also Twitter. So Twitter is another example that they decided to slowly migrate. So they have their native application running on all devices, and they created the so-called Twitter Lite. If you open Twitter now from your browser, you're going to find the Twitter Lite, and you're going to find more or less most of the features available on the Progressive Web App, but not all of them. So they have the two apps, and they are slowly migrating the features. Recently, also, we have seen Google Maps. So one of the biggest struggle or the biggest questions that I've been asking people, now if you want to navigate from point A to B, what is the app that you're going to use? Most people would say Google Apps or even Apple Apps, I don't know. But a native app, right? So you're going to use a native app for navigation. And the challenge was how to actually get this experience inside the browser. And they are on the way. I'm not saying that they managed to do it, but they are still on the way. And if you want a motivation behind that, I can ask you directly, if you want to go from point A to point B, but you are on a laptop, what are you going to do? Are you going to install Google Earth, or are you going to go to maps.google.com? So now you know. So if you go to maps.google.com on your laptop, you know that the experience on maps.google.com is faster, better than really downloading Google Earth and waiting for I don't know how many megabytes of download and install. Most likely, people don't like to do that nowadays. But what they succeeded with is actually Photos, Google Photos, if you are using it. So Google Photos has been announced a few weeks ago as a complete progressive web app, and the experience there is more or less interesting. So yeah, this is a project that you have to take a look at if you want to follow. I can go probably over those steps, but maybe if I have to stress on 2 or 3 only steps, I'll take the service worker and skip waiting. So those are also some concepts that are interesting to know. So adding the service worker. So I mentioned earlier that the manifest file need to be on your root directory, because this is what the navigator will look for to figure out that you are a progressive web app, as well as search engines. But also, the service worker is something that is up to you to do. And here, at the beginning, I decided to just copy the service worker generated by my starter kit, just copy it as it is. And you can see that it's checking if service worker is available inside my navigator or not, and so on. But the thing, oh, this is not the diff I meant, okay. Maybe this one. Yeah, but the thing about it is that service worker also need to be served on your root directory. Why? For security reasons, if your service worker is placed, let's say, inside your scripts folder, then it will have access to only everything under the scripts folder. It will not be able to access anything behind that folder. That's for security reasons. So a service worker also needs to be placed inside your root directory. This might be easy for anyone who is using maybe plain JavaScript or maybe some kind of direct access to the web app, but it was a little bit challenging here inside framework, where there is no actually root directory. There is no index.html, there is no service or scripts folder or something like that. And the trick that I did here is that basically I placed the service worker somewhere, and then I copied the content of the service worker to be served whenever here, to be served whenever sw.js getting called. So I'm just listening to /sw.js, and whenever this URL is called, I just copy the content of my script file inside this location. This is a workaround if your framework is a little bit outdated and doesn't support service worker. Luckily, in a newer version of Vaadin application, now we are supporting this, and you don't really need to go over this workaround. So that was the first example. The second example for you is skip waiting. So we agreed that the service worker is like your installer. It's your exe file that gets downloaded. The biggest difference is that you can control when it gets downloaded. It's the launcher of your application. It controls everything. But if this service worker is running, then you cannot really replace it by a newer one. You have to wait for the user to quit the web application and open it again, or you have to wait till the user refresh all the instances of your web application. Let's assume that the user has like multiple tabs opened, then the service worker is serving all the tabs at the same time. So you have to wait till all the tabs get refreshed to be able to refresh the service worker. Luckily, since it's all JavaScript, and it's all without waiting for the user to click install and so on, you can do that using JavaScript. You just say self.skipWaiting. So don't wait. If there is a newer version, just use it directly. And here, what I'm doing is, if there is a newer cache, then just use the new cache. This is more or less something that you might want to do or might not, depending on your business. For example, if you take a look at Google Inbox. So Google Inbox, after a few weeks, you will find a small notification telling you there is a newer version of this web application. Please refresh the page to get it. So they are going to not forcefully replace the service worker to prevent any interruption or any problems in the cache. But otherwise, if the situation is simple, maybe you can get use of this code. So yeah, here I'm replacing all the cache items one by one whenever I get a newer version from the website or from the server. So plenty of other examples. You can take a look at the whole idea here. But even if you don't like to take a look at this, I hope by now you got an idea about what is it exactly about. It's just a bunch of checklist items. If you don't have them, you just include them inside your application. Now, if I go back to the presentation, the link for an interesting blog post also about this, and maybe a newer version. So I have, this is written for Vaadin 8, but now that we have Vaadin 10, we have huge differences and better versions. So if you want to read more about this, also to see the GitHub project that I have just mentioned. Otherwise, of course, you can all the time hit me on Twitter if you have any other questions. Talking about questions, any questions related to this? Yes, please go ahead.
What is your opinion if we are replacing the mobile naming apps in the future?
Good question. So the question is, are we replacing native mobile apps in the future? I can't say that native mobile apps are going to be replaced, but they are going to be decreased dramatically. So already Gartner said that there is 20% less spending on native development versus web platform. That's a decision made by big companies in the world, and they have seen like a decrease in the spending done there. On the other side, my personal prediction is that some key native apps are going to stay native. That's something that will not change in the near future. But on the other side, more businesses gonna rethink twice and 3 times before spending too much on native apps versus just having a progressive web app. Talking about the pizzeria, for example. Sure. More questions? Yeah. Excellent question. Thank you. So the question is, what hardware capabilities can we have using a progressive web app. So as of right now, plenty. So web platform has actually developed a lot, and they have done a lot of good work in this regard. If we're talking about Bluetooth, if we're talking about accessing photos, storage, caching, even in browser database, you name it. Virtual reality is now a possibility to be able to done on the browser. VR, AR, and so on. AutoCAD, for example. So AutoCAD has implemented their application to be running fully on the browser. So now you can go and use all the 3D manipulation tools inside the browser without really having to install AutoCAD. And I predict that the same more or less going to happen for editing software, photo editing, coding software, and so on. They are more or less moving to the web as well. So a lot of capabilities. It's just about standardizing them. Some of them are not really standard. Some of them are still on the process. But the interesting thing is that because web is way more accessible and has more reach, they have even implemented new capabilities that were never integrated inside native applications. Talking about one-step sign-up and one-step pay. To explain this, basically, the idea here is that we want to get rid of any form. If you are like myself, you don't really like to fill a form, your billing address, your first name, your last name, and so on. This is a lot of struggle, right? But they want to get rid of that. Also, check out form, like credit card, 16-digit credit card, expiration date, and so on. You want to get rid of all of form filling inside a mobile app. So what they're trying to do is something called web payment APIs, which is basically a unified way of paying from a browser without really having to enter your credit card information every single time. Same for registration form. So instead of having autocomplete, this autocomplete is okay-ish thingy, but it's still a struggle because sometimes you fill with a wrong first name or wrong last name, or you have multiple persons, so you don't really like to add this information. So having a fixed way of signing up from one tab, and same applies to sign in. So you open a website for the first time, and it tells you, hey, you can sign in, and then you tap, and then it knows all your information without really having to type it over and over. So those kind of capabilities are now, like web payment APIs is now available in most browsers. They are just, on the way of putting a final standard and getting all the vendors to agree, like Apple, Mozilla, and Google to agree on the final standards and how the final format going to look like. Yeah. More questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, so if I understand your question correctly, you're asking about what is the future of progressive web app, which language you're going to use, right? The battery usage. Yeah, so the question is this progressive web apps going to drain the battery? Yes. No, the answer is not yes. So to answer this question, basically, maybe in this example I showed Java PWA. Just to explain, I was just trying to show that if you have a Java backend, so this is a Java backend, and then I am pushing a PWA on its front end. By any means, this is not a migration from Java to JavaScript to front end and so on. So the end result that is going to run inside my mobile device is going to be just JavaScript, the browser language. There is no Java on the front end at all. So that's one point. The second point is the drainage of battery. So this is something that I like to compare it with any application. So if we're talking about Android, for example, Android is a Java code or Kotlin code that runs on a virtual machine, right? this is a JavaScript code that runs on also a virtual machine, the JavaScript engine, or V8. If we're talking about V8, we are talking also about WebAssembly. So this is also one of the capabilities that now is available on the web. You can have WebAssembly running inside the browser, running all your native application natively without really having to write JavaScript as well. So now we're talking about a virtual machine that is like kind of running your application. And I would say it depends on the end user, how optimized code they are using to be able to make the application smooth and not really executing a lot of code. The situation is a little bit different on iOS devices because iOS is actually native, but that's just the way how things are competing now. So how to make an engine that is really, really fast and make rendering of this web application natively and run really fast versus a native application. The drainage, I wouldn't say that there is any difference between both of them. Both of them are occupying screen time as far as you have them open. Both of them are making operation, more or less mathematical operation, like, at the end, everything is a mathematical operation. So the mathematical operation that is running to render your application is more or less the same. iOS is really controlling this. So one more thing I really like about iOS is that because iOS controls how the apps behave, it's sometimes better to have a native app written by Apple to run on their device than having a third-party app. And now when we are talking about a progressive web app, it's at the end of the day running inside Safari, and Safari is an app written by Apple, so you know that the limits of how an Apple-developed application running. It's running inside the process of Safari. So it's going to be boxed as well. Does that answer your question, or? Okay, it says time's up, but as always, my Twitter is available, or I'm going to be here till noon, I guess. So please reach me if you have more questions, and thank you so much for attending. Enjoy the rest of the conference.